My name is Lily, and I'm about to tell you how I destroyed the man I loved more than life itself. He said he loved me. He said forever. But forever ended the moment I opened his laptop. You think you know pain. Wait until you read the messages your boyfriend sends to another woman. For 2 years, I was the perfect girlfriend. For 2 months, I was something much worse. I was his judge, his jury, and his executioner. I watched them together through a restaurant window, holding hands, laughing. And in that moment, I made a promise. He would pay. He stole my future, so I decided to steal his. My name is Lily. Lily Ann Mitchell. And I am going to tell you a story. It's a story about love and about the most terrible kind of betrayal. But mostly, it's a story about the long, cold road to something that felt a lot like justice. I grew up in a small town called Westport in Ohio. It was the kind of place where everyone knew your name, your parents' names, and probably what you got on your third-grade spelling test. It was safe, predictable, and for a long time, I thought it was the only kind of life worth living. My parents, David and Susan Mitchell, were good people. My dad worked at the local hardware store, and my mom was a third-grade teacher at the same elementary school I had attended. We lived in a modest house on Maple Street, with a big backyard where I spent countless hours drawing and painting under the old oak tree. I was an only child, so I learned early on to entertain myself, to get lost in my own imagination. My childhood was happy, if unremarkable. I had a few close friends, did well in school, and discovered my love for art in the 7th grade when my teacher, Mrs. Patterson, told me I had a real gift. She was the first person who made me believe I could be something more than just a small-town girl. I spent my high school years in the art room, painting and drawing, losing myself in colors and shapes while the rest of the world faded away. I was shy, introverted, content to observe rather than participate. While other girls were worrying about prom dresses and popularity, I was worrying about getting the right shade of blue for the sky in my latest landscape. I met Jake in high school, Jacob Ryan Miller. He was a year older, with a smile that could light up the entire football field on a Friday night and eyes the color of warm honey. He was the quarterback, the golden boy, and I was just Lily, the quiet girl who liked to read and paint in the art room during lunch. When he first asked me out, I thought it was a prank. I actually looked behind me to see if someone else was standing there. But it wasn't. He said he liked my laugh. He said it was real. He said that in a town full of girls trying to be someone they weren't, I was the only one who seemed comfortable in my own skin. Looking back now, I wonder if that was the first lie. Not a malicious lie, not then, but a lie nonetheless. Because I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I was awkward and insecure and desperately hoping that no one would notice me. But he made me feel seen. He made me feel like maybe I was special after all. And that feeling, that intoxicating feeling of being chosen by the golden boy, was enough to make me fall for him completely. For 2 years, we were inseparable. We were the couple everyone in Westport talked about, the one that would make it. We went a homecoming together, prom together, and spent countless summer nights driving down back roads with the windows rolled down, singing along to country music. His parents loved me. My parents loved him. It was the kind of perfect, storybook romance that small towns love to gossip about. When he went to Ohio State for college, I stayed behind to finish my senior year, and we did the long-distance thing. It was hard, but we made it work. He'd come home on weekends, and we'd sit in his truck by the old quarry, listening to music and dreaming about our future. We planned it all out. After I graduated, I'd join him in Columbus. We'd get an apartment together, I'd finish my degree in graphic design, he'd start his career in business. Then, a few years later, we'd get married. We'd have 2 kids, a golden retriever, and a house with a big white porch. It was the American dream, and it was ours for the taking. My first year in Columbus was magical. Living with Jake was everything I'd hoped for. He was attentive, funny, and so loving. He'd leave me little notes on the bathroom mirror, and he always remembered to bring home my favorite strawberry milk from the corner store. I was building my little freelance design business, taking on projects for local shops and restaurants, slowly building a portfolio and a reputation. He was climbing the ladder at a marketing firm called Sterling Cooper Group. We were a team, a perfect, unbreakable team, or so I thought. The cracks started to appear so slowly that I almost didn't see them. It was in the little things. He started working late, which was understandable at first. He was ambitious. Then, the late nights became more frequent. He'd come home smelling of perfume that wasn't mine and expensive cocktails, not the beer he usually drank. He became distant, distracted. When I'd talk to him, he'd look at his phone, a little half-smile on his face. When I asked who he was texting, he'd say, "No one, just work stuff." I tried to shake the feeling. I told myself I was being paranoid, a jealous girlfriend. I'd pour all my nervous energy into my art, painting landscapes of Westport, trying to hold onto the simplicity of our past. But the feeling grew, a cold, hard knot in my stomach that just wouldn't go away. I started having dreams where I was chasing him through crowded rooms, calling his name, and he never turned around. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, reach for him in the dark, and find him there, solid and warm, and I'd tell myself it was just a dream. Just a stupid dream. Then, one Tuesday, I knew. It wasn't a grand discovery. It was a tiny, mundane thing. Jake had left his laptop open on the kitchen table while he jumped in the shower. A notification popped up on the screen from Facebook Messenger. The name on the notification was Chloe. The preview read, "Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again. XX. My heart just stopped. For a second, the world went silent. Then, my ears started ringing. I stared at those words and they burned into my brain. Last night was incredible. Jake had been working late. Again. My hand was shaking as I reached for the mouse. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was a violation of his privacy. But the need to know, to confirm the horror I was feeling, was stronger than any sense of decency. I clicked on the message. The chat log opened, and a whole secret world unfolded in front of my eyes. It was like reading a novel about two strangers, except the main character was the man I was living with, the man I loved. Their conversation was full of flirtation, of inside jokes, of plans. There were messages about dinners they'd had, about how he loved the way she smiled, about meeting up at a hotel downtown. The messages went back months. Months. The whole time he was telling me he loved me, he was telling her the same things. The whole time he was planning a future with me, he was building a present with her. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, frozen, scrolling through page after page of my own destruction. I saw a message from her that said, "When are you going to tell her?" And his reply, "Soon. I just need to find the right time. I don't want to hurt her." Hurt me? The irony was so cruel it was almost funny. He was so worried about hurting me, yet he was stabbing me in the heart, slowly, every single day. I saw messages where they talked about me, about how I was so clueless, so trusting. She called me the innocent little girlfriend from the country. He didn't correct her. He just sent a laughing emoji. I heard the bathroom door open. The sound of the shower stopped. I quickly memorized her full name, Chloe Harrison, and the last thing she'd posted, a photo at a local coffee shop called The Grind. I closed the laptop, my hands clammy. Jake walked into the kitchen, a towel around his waist, his hair wet and tousled. He looked so familiar, and yet, in that moment, he was a complete stranger. "Hey, babe," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. I flinched, a tiny movement, but he noticed. "You okay?" I forced a smile. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. "Yeah, just a headache. You want me to get you some Tylenol?" "No, I'm just gonna lie down." I went to our bedroom, our bed, and I lay there staring at the ceiling. The tears came then, silent and hot, soaking into my pillow. I was heartbroken, yes. But underneath the crushing wave of grief, something else began to form. A small, hard pebble of rage. He had lied to me. He had stolen years of my life, years I could have been with someone who actually deserved me. He had made a fool of me, and I knew in that moment that I couldn't just leave. I couldn't just pack my bags and let him ride off into the sunset with his Chloe. The pain was too deep. It demanded something more. For the next 2 weeks, I played the part of the perfect, oblivious girlfriend. It was the most exhausting acting job of my life. I cooked his favorite meals. I laughed at his jokes. I let him hold me at night, my skin crawling with every touch. I even initiated sex once, just to see if he would still do it, still be intimate with me while carrying on with her. He did, without hesitation. That was the moment any last shred of love I had for him died. It was replaced by something cold and hard and utterly focused. But while I was playing dumb, I was watching. I was learning. I found out Chloe Harrison worked at the same marketing firm as Jake. She was a junior account executive, 24 years old, a recent graduate of Miami University. I found her on Instagram. She was pretty in a polished, manicured way. Blonde, with a perfect smile and pictures of her at brunches and yoga classes and girls' weekends in Nashville. She looked like she'd never had a real problem in her life. And now, she had mine. I also found her address, her favorite coffee shop, her gym, her regular Sunday brunch spot. I knew her schedule better than she did. I watched her from a distance, studying her like she was a subject in one of my paintings. I tried to understand what Jake saw in her. Was she smarter than me? Funnier? Better in bed? I'll never know. But I do know that she was just as much a victim as I was, even if I wasn't ready to admit that yet. One Friday, Jake told me he had to work late on a big project and would probably just crash on the office couch. It was the oldest lie in the book. I just smiled and kissed him goodbye. An hour later, I was in my car, parked across the street from his office building. I had a good view of the main entrance. I sat there for hours, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my eyes never leaving the door. I had brought a sketchbook to pass the time, but I couldn't draw. My hands were shaking too much. I just sat there, watching, waiting. It was dark by the time they came out. I saw them before they saw the street. Jake, with his arm casually draped over Chloe's shoulder. She was laughing, looking up at him. They walked to a little Italian place down the street, the kind with candlelight and red-checkered tablecloths called Marcello's. I watched them through the window. I saw him pull out her chair. I saw them clink glasses of wine. I saw him reach across the table and hold her hand. He looked at her the way he used to look at me, and the pebble of rage inside me grew into a boulder. This wasn't just about a broken heart anymore. This was about my entire reality being shattered. The future I had built in my mind, the life I had lived for years, it was all a lie. Driving home that night, I didn't cry. My mind was clear, cold, and focused. I needed a plan. Not a plan to get him back, but a plan to make sure he and his perfect little Chloe understood exactly what they had done. I needed them to feel a fraction of the pain I was feeling. I decided I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of a clean break. I was going to dismantle his world piece by piece, just as he had dismantled mine. Phase 1 began with information. I'm a designer. I'm good with computers. Jake was careless with his passwords. I knew them all. I started by keeping a meticulous log. Every time he told me he was working late, I noted it. Every time he said he was going for a drink with the guys from the office, I wrote it down. Then I'd follow him, or I'd have a friend from my yoga class, a girl named Sarah who I'd confided in, keep an eye on social media. We'd find photos from restaurants, tagged locations, little crumbs of their secret life that they thought no one was watching. Sarah was a blessing I didn't know I needed. I had met her at a hot yoga class about 6 months before all this happened. She was from Cleveland, worked as a paralegal, and had a sharp, no-nonsense attitude that I admired. She was going through her own divorce at the time, her husband having left her for his dental hygienist, so she understood betrayal in a way that few people could. When I finally broke down and told her everything, sobbing in her car outside the yoga studio, she didn't offer empty platitudes. She didn't say he would get what he deserved, or that time heals all wounds. She just listened, and then she said, "What do you need from me?" That was it. She became my partner in this, my lookout, my sounding board. She never judged me for the path I was choosing. She just helped me walk it. I created a dummy email account. The first thing I did was send a simple, anonymous email to the HR department at Sterling Cooper Group. It was carefully worded, from a concerned colleague. It didn't name names, but it alluded to a highly visible, ongoing, and inappropriate relationship between a senior staff member and a junior employee, which is creating a hostile work environment and a clear conflict of interest. I knew office politics. I knew how these things fester. I wasn't trying to get them fired, not yet. I was just planting a seed, a little weed of anxiety in their perfect garden. The effect was immediate. Jake started coming home even more stressed. He was snapping at me, which was new. One night, he slammed his phone down on the table. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice full of fake concern. "Yeah, just some stupid office politics. Someone's spreading rumors, it's nothing." He wouldn't look me in the eye, the seed had been planted. I felt a tiny, bitter thrill. It was the first step. Over the next few weeks, I continued my research. I learned everything about Chloe Harrison. I found her personal blog, where she wrote about her life, her goals, and her love for her family. She had a younger brother named Ethan who was in high school. She posted about her parents' 30th wedding anniversary. She seemed so normal, so genuine. That almost made it worse. It would have been easier if she had been some kind of monster. But she was just a girl who fell for the wrong guy. I found her father's LinkedIn profile. He was a prominent pastor at a large church in a nearby suburb called Westerville. The kind of man who gave sermons on family values and fidelity. Perfect. One day, I got a new pay-as-you-go phone. From that phone, I sent a long, detailed email to Chloe's father. I didn't use my name. I just wrote as an anonymous friend, deeply concerned for his daughter's well-being. I told him she was involved with a man who was in a committed, long-term relationship. I didn't use Jake's name, but I described him perfectly. I said I was worried she was being used and that her reputation was at risk. I made it sound like I was looking out for her, not attacking her. I hit send and waited. The reaction was spectacular. The next Saturday, Jake was supposed to be playing golf with a client. Instead, I drove past Chloe's apartment building, a place I had found weeks ago. Parked outside was a large, black SUV. I saw a distinguished-looking older man who I recognized from his LinkedIn photo, getting out of the car, his face like a thundercloud. He went into her building. About an hour later, I saw him come out, and behind him, looking pale and upset, was Chloe. Jake wasn't with her, but I knew the message had been delivered. The righteous pastor had paid a visit to his wayward daughter. That night, Jake didn't come home until after midnight. He was furious. He stormed around the apartment, muttering under his breath. "You won't believe this," he finally spat out at me. "Chloe's dad showed up at her apartment today. Someone sent him some crazy letter saying she was breaking up a relationship. Her dad is furious. She's a mess." He ran his hands through his hair. "This is insane. Who would do something like that?" I asked, my eyes wide with innocence. "I have no idea. Someone from work, maybe. That stupid HR thing, now this someone's got it out for us." He looked scared. The confident golden boy was cracking. "Us?" I said, my voice dropping just a little. He froze. He looked at me, and for a second I saw a flicker of guilt. Then it was gone. "Me, I meant me. It's just work stuff. You wouldn't understand." It was the first time he'd slipped. The first time he'd almost told me the truth. I just nodded and went to bed, leaving him in the dark living room, alone with his thoughts. The boulder of rage in my chest was now a mountain. But I wasn't done, not even close. This was still just the appetizer. The next phase was about isolation, about making sure he had no one to turn to but me, the person he was betraying. I started with his friends. Jake had a close-knit group of buddies from college. There was Mark, a loud, boisterous guy who sold insurance. There was David, a quiet accountant who was engaged to a sweet girl named Rachel. And there was Tom, who was already married with a baby on the way. I knew their girlfriends, their wives. We'd go on double dates, have barbecues. I was always the sweet, devoted Lily. Over a series of casual coffee dates and phone calls, I started dropping little seeds of doubt. Not about the affair, not directly, but about Jake's reliability, his recent behavior. "He's just so stressed with work," I'd confide in Mark's wife, Jen. We were having coffee at a little cafe near her work. "He's always working late. He's so secretive about his phone. I'm starting to get a little worried about him." I'd look sad, concerned. Jen, being a good friend, would nod sympathetically. Soon, the wives were talking. They'd mention it to their husbands. "Is Jake okay?" Lily's worried. "He's working crazy hours." The husbands would then talk to Jake, but not in an accusatory way, just as friends. "Hey man, everything all right? The girls are saying you're working yourself to the bone." Jake started to feel the walls closing in. His secret life was no longer a private, exciting thing. It was becoming a burden, a source of stress that was affecting his friendships. He started pulling away from them, too. He didn't want to answer their questions. He became more and more isolated, with only Chloe and me in his life. And Chloe, after her father's intervention, was under immense pressure. She was pulling away from him, too. I saw the change in him. He was losing weight. He had dark circles under his eyes. The golden boy was tarnishing. But the most important person I needed to isolate him from was Chloe herself. The anonymous tip to her father had shaken her, but it hadn't broken them. I needed to drive a wedge between them so deep that they'd never be able to climb out. The opportunity came in the form of a work conference. Jake told me he had to go to Chicago for 3 days for a big marketing summit. I knew Chloe would be going too. I smiled and told him to have a great time. "I'll miss you," I said, kissing him goodbye. What I didn't tell him was that I was also going to Chicago. I booked a room in the same hotel where the conference was being held, the Palmer House Hilton, using a fake name and a prepaid credit card. I arrived a few hours after Jake's flight left. I checked in, got my key, and started my surveillance. The first evening, I saw them in the hotel bar. They were sitting in a dark corner, heads together, looking tense. Chloe was crying. Jake was holding her hand, trying to console her. The pressure from her father and the rumors at work were taking their toll. I could see the cracks in their shiny new relationship. It was beautiful. I sat at the bar, nursing a club soda, watching them from a distance. I saw Chloe pull her hand away. I saw Jake lean in, whispering, pleading. I saw her shake her head. They were falling apart, and I was there to witness it. I felt a surge of satisfaction so powerful it almost made me dizzy. This was working. My plan was working. My plan was simple. I needed proof, not for me but for Chloe. Proof that Jake was still the same liar with her as he was with me. I knew his patterns. I knew his phone password. On the second night of the conference, I waited until very late. I knew there was a big gala dinner. I saw them leave the bar around 11 p.m. and get on the elevator together. Chloe was in room 714. Jake was in 812. I gave them an hour. I sat in my room, staring at the clock, counting down the minutes. I thought about all the nights I had waited for him at home, wondering where he was, making excuses for him in my head. Now the tables were turned. Now I was the one pulling the strings. Then I put on my plan. I took out my pay-as-you-go phone. I had set up a fake email account in the name of Amanda, a fake name. I sent an email to Jake's personal address. The subject line was, "Hi from the bar last night." The message was simple. "Hey stranger, I saw you at the bar with that blonde girl. You looked so intense. I'm here with my girlfriends for a bachelorette party. We're in room 1420. If you get bored, come say hi. I'm the one in the red dress." Amanda, I knew Jake. He was a flirt, and he was a cheater. He wouldn't be able to resist the ego boost of thinking another woman was interested. But more importantly, I knew Chloe was insecure, and I knew her room number. I took the elevator down to the 7th floor. I found room 714. I slipped a piece of paper under the door. It was a printout of the email I just sent to Jake, with his email address clearly visible at the top. I had folded it so it just said Jake on the outside. Then, I went back to my room and waited. I didn't have to wait long. About 20 minutes later, I heard footsteps in the hallway, then a furious knocking. I peeked through my peephole. It was Chloe. She was banging on Jake's door. The door opened and I saw Jake, shirtless, looking confused. "What the hell is this?" Chloe shrieked, shoving the paper into his chest. Jake read it, his face going pale. "Chloe, I have no idea who this is. This is crazy. Is this why you're really here? You have some other woman waiting for you? Amanda in the red dress? No, I swear, I've never seen this before. Someone's messing with us. Messing with us, like the letter to my father, like the HR complaint. This is all connected, Jake. What kind of mess have you dragged me into?" She was sobbing now. "It's her," Jake said, a horrifying realization dawning on his face. "It's Lily. It has to be. She knows." I felt a jolt of pure electricity. He'd said my name. For the first time, he'd said my name in the context of this mess. He was starting to figure it out. "Your girlfriend?" Chloe's voice was full of disbelief. "You think your sweet little girlfriend from Ohio has been doing all this? Who else could it be?" He whispered, looking terrified. I watched them argue for another minute before Chloe stormed back to her room, slamming the door. Jake stood in the hallway for a long time, looking utterly lost. He ran his hands through his hair, paced back and forth, then finally went back into his room and closed the door. I closed my door softly, leaned against it, and for the first time in weeks I smiled. A real smile. The game was changing. The next day I flew home before them. I got back to the apartment and waited. I cleaned the apartment, did laundry, made it look like I had been there all along. I even went to the grocery store and bought ingredients for dinner just to complete the illusion. Jake came home that evening. He looked like a ghost. He didn't even say hello. He just walked into the living room, saw me sitting there, and his face hardened. "It was you," he said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "What was me?" I asked, my voice calm and steady. "Chicago. The email, the letter to Chloe's dad, the HR complaint, all of it. It was you." His voice was shaking with a mixture of rage and fear. I looked at him for a long moment. This was the man I had loved since I was 17 years old. This was the man I had given my whole heart to. And now he was looking at me like I was a monster. "Yes," I said. "It was." He stared at me, stunned by my confession. He had expected me to deny it, to cry, to fall apart. I did none of those things. "How could you?" he whispered. "You're crazy. You're a psycho. I'm a psycho." I laughed, and the sound was hollow and cold. "Jake, I loved you. I gave you everything. And you lied to me for months. You made love to me and then went to her. You planned a future with me while planning a present with her. You stole my time, my trust, my happiness. And you think I'm the psycho for making you feel a fraction of that pain? It was a mistake." He yelled, his composure finally cracking. "I was going to tell you. I was trying to figure out how to end it." "Were you?" I asked, my voice dripping with contempt. "Were you going to end it, or were you just waiting for the right time to leave me for her?" "I read your messages, Jake. Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again. You weren't trying to end it. You were living your best life while I was sitting at home, worrying about you, loving you. And do you know what the worst part is? I saw the messages where you talked about me, where you laughed at me with her, where you called me the innocent little girlfriend from the country. I saw all of it. He had no answer for that. The truth was a weapon, and I was using it well." He just stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "So what now?" he said, his shoulders slumping. "You've ruined my life. Chloe won't talk to me. Work is a nightmare. My friends are all acting weird. Are you happy?" I stood up and walked towards him. I stopped just a foot away, close enough to see the fear in his honey-colored eyes. "Happy?" I repeated. "No, Jake, I'm not happy. Happiness left this apartment the first time you touched her. But I am satisfied, for now." I walked past him, into the bedroom we had shared, and started packing a bag. He followed me. "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving," I said calmly, zipping up my suitcase. "You can have the apartment. You can have the life you built on lies. But you should know, I'm not done. What I did in Chicago was just a taste. Every time you close your eyes, every time your phone buzzes, every time you meet someone new, you'll wonder if it's me. You'll wonder what I'm planning next. I will be a shadow in your life forever, Jake. A reminder of what you did. That is your punishment." I picked up my suitcase and walked to the door. He just stood there, speechless. "Goodbye, Jake," I said, and I walked out. I moved in with Sarah for a while. Her apartment was small, a one-bedroom in a complex on the north side of Columbus, but she cleared out space for me without a second thought. She even gave me her bed for the first week while she slept on the couch, until I insisted on taking the couch myself. Those first few weeks were a blur. I went through the motions of living. I ate when Sarah put food in front of me. I showered when I couldn't stand the smell of myself anymore. I threw myself into my work, taking on every design project I could find, staying up until 3 in the morning just to keep my mind occupied. I started painting again, too. Not landscapes of Westport, but abstract, angry pieces full of dark reds and cold blues. One painting I called Betrayal. It was a swirl of black and crimson, with jagged streaks of white cutting through it like scars. Another I called The Lie. It was deceptively beautiful at first glance, all soft golds and warm honey colors, but if you looked closely, you could see the cracks, the darkness bleeding through from underneath. It was therapy, putting all that pain onto canvas. Sarah was patient with me. She didn't ask questions. She just made sure I was eating, sleeping, functioning. Sometimes we'd sit on her tiny balcony at night, drinking wine and staring at the city lights, and she'd tell me stories about her own divorce, about the pain and the anger and the slow, painful process of putting herself back together. She was further along in her journey than I was, and she gave me hope that maybe, someday, I would get there too. But I wasn't done. Just as I promised, I became his shadow. I didn't actively seek out information on him, not at first. I was too exhausted, too emotionally drained. But information has a way of finding you when you least expect it. A few weeks later, Chloe reached out to me. She'd found my contact information through a mutual friend, someone we both knew from the yoga studio. She wanted to meet. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. Part of me still hated her, still blamed her for her part in destroying my life. But another part of me, a smaller part, wondered if she was just as much a victim as I was. We met at a quiet coffee shop on the outskirts of the city, a place where neither of us was likely to run into anyone we knew. She looked terrible. Her perfect blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her eyes were red-rimmed, with dark circles underneath. She was wearing a simple sweatshirt and no makeup, a far cry from the polished Instagram photos I had studied for weeks. She was nervous, fiddling with a napkin, tearing it into tiny pieces that accumulated on the table between us. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, the first words out of her mouth. "I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know he had a girlfriend." I looked at her. I had spent so much time hating her, this other woman. But sitting there, seeing her broken, I realized she was just another one of his victims. He had lied to her, too. He had told her he was single, that he was just waiting for the right time to leave a relationship that was already over. He had fed her the same lies he fed me. The same charm, the same promises, the same honey-eyed gaze that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. "I know," I said. It was the truth. We talked for a long time. She told me how he had pursued her, how charming he was, how he'd made her feel special. Just like he'd done with me. She told me about her father, how ashamed he was, how she'd had to move out of her apartment because the gossip was so bad. Jake's shadow had fallen on her, too. She had lost her home, her reputation, her relationship with her family, all because she fell for the wrong man. A man who had lied to her from the very beginning. "What are you going to do?" She asked me. "I've already done it," I said. "He knows what he did, and he'll never forget it." She nodded slowly, as if she understood. Maybe she did. Maybe she had her own fantasies of revenge, her own dark thoughts about the man who had ruined her life. We sat in silence for a while, two women bound together by the same betrayal, the same pain. It was strange, but in that moment, I felt closer to her than I had felt to anyone in weeks. She was the only person in the world who truly understood what I had been through, because she had been through it, too. We parted with an awkward hug and a promise to stay in touch. I don't think either of us really believed that promise. Some connections are forged in fire, but they don't always last. They burn bright and hot, and then they fade away, leaving only ashes. But I had one more piece of unfinished business. The ultimate act, the final curtain call. I knew Jake was struggling. Chloe was gone. His work reputation was in tatters, not because of the affair itself, but because of the stress and distraction it caused. He was making mistakes. Rumor had it he was on thin ice. Sarah's husband, who worked in the same building, heard whispers that Jake had missed several important deadlines and had been seen arriving late and leaving early. His usual confident swagger replaced by a haunted look. He was alone in that apartment, the one we had picked out together, surrounded by memories he had poisoned. That's when I sent the final message. It wasn't to him. It was to his boss, the CEO of Sterling Cooper Group, a man named Richard Sterling. It was a beautifully designed, anonymous package. Inside was a USB drive. On it was a file. A simple, single document. It was a timeline. A meticulously detailed, day-by-day, week-by-week timeline of the last 6 months of Jake's life. It listed his work meetings, his late nights at the office, his business trips. And next to each work obligation, in a different color, was the reality. The dinners with Chloe, the hotel stays, the times he was with her when he was supposed to be working. It was compiled from his own chat logs, from location data from photos they'd posted, from my own surveillance notes. It was a complete and utter destruction of his professional credibility. The document was titled simply, "A Study in Time Management." I spent weeks putting it together. I cross-referenced every date, every time, every location. I made sure there were no mistakes, no room for doubt. I wanted it to be irrefutable. I wanted Richard Sterling to look at that timeline and see not just an employee having an affair, but a liar, a cheat, a man who had defrauded the company by expensing personal dinners as business meetings, who had lied about his whereabouts, who had prioritized his own selfish desires over his professional responsibilities. I included screenshots of his expense reports, cross-referenced with photos Chloe had posted on Instagram from the same restaurants on the same nights. The evidence was overwhelming. The package was delivered on a Monday morning. I used a courier service and paid in cash, so there was no paper trail. I watched from across the street as the courier walked into the lobby of the Sterling Cooper building. I waited until I saw him come out, empty-handed, and then I drove away. There was no turning back now. By Wednesday, Jake was fired. Not just let go, but fired for gross misconduct. For lying on expense reports, I had included several instances where he'd expensed dinners with Chloe as client meetings, and for conduct unbecoming of an employee. Sarah's husband called her that night with the news. He said the whole office was buzzing. Apparently, Richard Sterling had called an all-hands meeting and had used Jake's termination as an example of the company's commitment to integrity and ethical behavior. He hadn't named names, of course, but everyone knew. Everyone always knows. I heard about it through Sarah, who heard it from her husband. The news spread like wildfire. The golden boy of Westport, Ohio, the one who was going to make it big, was jobless, alone, and a public laughingstock in the Columbus corporate world. I imagined him packing up his desk, walking past his former colleagues, their eyes averted, their whispers following him out the door. I imagined him driving home to that empty apartment, the one we had decorated together, the one filled with memories of a love that had turned out to be a lie. I should have felt triumphant. I had won. I had destroyed him just as he had destroyed me, but I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty. A few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Jake. "You win. I hope you're happy. You destroyed me." I stared at the message for a long time. Did I feel happy? No. I felt a profound emptiness. I had taken my pain and used it as a weapon. I had carved my revenge out of his life, piece by piece. But in doing so, I had carved out a part of myself, too. The part that believed in love, in trust, in happy endings. That part was gone. I had become someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of cold, calculated cruelty. Was that who I wanted to be? Was that who Jake had turned me into? I typed my reply. "I didn't destroy you, Jake. You did that all on your own. I just held up a mirror. You're not a victim. You're the architect of your own ruin." I never heard from him again. I blocked the number and tried to move on. But moving on is easier said than done. The memories don't just disappear because you want them to. They linger, like ghosts, in the quiet moments in the middle of the night, in the songs that come on the radio that you used to sing together. I moved away from Columbus. I couldn't stay there. The city was full of ghosts. Every street corner, every restaurant, every park held a memory. I couldn't walk into a coffee shop without remembering the times we had sat together, laughing, planning our future. I couldn't drive past the university without thinking of the first time I visited him there, how excited I was, how full of hope. Columbus had become a museum of my own broken heart, and I couldn't bear to be its curator anymore. I moved to a small town on the coast of Maine, a place called Brooksville. It's the kind of town that doesn't even appear on most maps. Population 1,200, if you count the dogs. It's as far from Ohio as I could get without leaving the country. The air smells like salt and pine trees. The ocean is gray and cold and endless. I opened a small art gallery on the main street, a narrow storefront that used to be a bookstore. I call it Lily's Cove. It's not much, just a few walls to hang my paintings and a counter to sell them from. But it's mine. I paint seascapes now. The ocean is a good listener. It's vast and deep and it doesn't judge. I paint the waves crashing against the rocks, the gulls wheeling in the gray sky, the fishing boats bobbing in the harbor. Sometimes tourists come in and buy one, and they tell me how peaceful my paintings are. They don't know that every stroke of the brush is an act of survival, a way of keeping the darkness at bay. I've made a few friends here. There's Martha, who runs the diner across the street. She's in her 60s, a widow with 3 grown children and a sharp wit that keeps me on my toes. She invites me over for Sunday dinner sometimes, and I sit at her kitchen table and pretend that I'm part of her family. There's Tom, the local fisherman who brings me fresh lobsters in exchange for a painting for his wife. There's Emily, the librarian, who stocks my favorite books on a special shelf just for me. They're good people, simple people, the kind who don't ask too many questions about where you came from or why you're here. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Jake. I wonder if he's okay. I wonder if he ever found a way to rebuild his life. I wonder if he found another job, another girlfriend, another future to plan. I wonder if he ever thinks about me, about what he did, about what I did in return. I hope he did. Not for his sake, but for mine. Because carrying that much anger for so long is a heavy burden. It's like dragging a bag of rocks everywhere you go. Eventually, your shoulders ache, your back gives out, and you realize that the only person you're hurting is yourself. It was necessary, my revenge. It was the only way I could see to get my power back. He had taken everything from me, my trust, my future, my sense of self, and I needed to take something back. I needed him to understand that you can't just destroy someone and walk away unscathed. There are consequences. There is a price to pay, and I made him pay it, but it didn't heal me. It just ended the chapter. The pain didn't magically disappear once he was fired and alone and miserable. It was still there, a dull ache in my chest that never quite went away. Revenge isn't a cure, it's just a closing of accounts. It settles the debt, but it doesn't fill the hole that was left behind. I've started seeing someone. His name is Daniel. He's a high school English teacher, a quiet man with kind eyes and a gentle laugh. He came into the gallery one rainy afternoon looking for a birthday gift for his mother. He bought a small painting of the harbor at sunset, and he asked me where I was from. I told him Ohio. He didn't press for more. We had coffee the next day and dinner the week after that. It's slow, careful, like learning to walk after a bad fall. He knows there are parts of me that are off limits, at least for now. He doesn't push. He just waits patiently like the tide. Sometimes, when I'm with him, I feel a flicker of something I thought I had lost forever. Hope, maybe, or trust. It's small and fragile, like a candle flame in a strong wind. But it's there. And I tend to it carefully, protecting it from the memories that still haunt me, from the anger that still simmers beneath the surface. Last week, Daniel asked me about my paintings. He wanted to know why I only paint seascapes now, why there are no people in my art. I thought about lying, about making up some story about my artistic vision. But instead, I told him the truth. I told him about Jake. I told him about the betrayal, the revenge, the long road to Brooksville. I left out some of the darker details, the ones that still make me feel ashamed, but I told him enough. He listened without interrupting. When I was done, he was quiet for a long time. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you for telling me," he said. "I know that couldn't have been easy." It wasn't, I admitted. He squeezed my hand gently. "You're not the person you were back then, Lily. You're not defined by what he did to you or by what you did in response. You're defined by what you do now, by the person you choose to be every day." I wanted to believe him. I still want to believe him. Maybe someday I will. My name is Lily Ann Mitchell, and that was my story. It's a story about love and betrayal, about pain and revenge. It's a story about the terrible things we do when we are hurt, and the long, long road to learning how to feel the sun on your face again, even when a part of you will always be living in the cold shadow of a broken heart. The affair destroyed our future, but my revenge, it freed me from the past. It was the closing argument in a trial that had no judge, no jury, no courtroom. It was my declaration that I would not be a victim, that I would not be discarded, that I would not be forgot. I made sure he would remember my name for the rest of his life. I made sure that every time he closed his eyes, he would see the face of the woman he had wronged, the woman who refused to go quietly into the night. And in the end, that was the only justice I could ever truly have. Not happiness, not healing, not a second chance at the future we had planned. Just the cold, hard satisfaction of knowing that he would never, ever forget what he did to me. That was my revenge. That was my closure. That was my freedom. The ocean is gray today, churning with white caps under a sky heavy with clouds. I stand at the window of my gallery, watching the waves, and I think about the girl I used to be. The girl who believed in fairy tales and happy endings. She's gone now, lost somewhere in the wreckage of Columbus, in the ashes of that apartment on High Street. In her place is someone harder, someone wiser, someone who knows that love can be a weapon and that the people closest to you can hurt you the most. But there's something else too, something new, a quiet acceptance, a peace that comes from knowing that I survived. I walked through the fire and came out the other side. I am not the same, I will never be the same, but I am here, I am alive. And I am learning, slowly, to let the sun warm my face again. The door to the gallery opens, and Daniel walks in, shaking rain from his coat. He smiles when he sees me, that gentle, patient smile that makes my heart feel a little less heavy. "Hey," he says, "thought you might want some company. I smile back, and for a moment the gray sky outside seems a little brighter. I'd like that, I say, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us can hope for. Not a happy ending, not a fairy tale, but just enough light to see by, enough warmth to keep going, enough hope to believe that tomorrow might be a little better than today. The waves keep crashing against the rocks. The gulls keep wheeling in the sky. And I keep painting, one brushstroke at a time, building a new life out of the ruins of the old one. It's not the life I planned. It's not the life I dreamed of when I was that girl in Westport, sitting in Jake's truck by the old quarry, believing in forever. But it's my life, and for the first time in a long time, I'm okay with that.